Also a huge game for the 49ers on Sunday. And Brian Baldinger joined us yesterday. Brian Baldinger joined us yesterday, and he says the Jags are the ultimate test for the Niners.
It's probably a good thing that they're going across the country to Jacksonville and playing one of the hottest teams in the league. Nothing can kind of bring you back to your winning ways than beating a good team on the road. Because when you beat a good team on the road, you get 6 hours with each other on the plane ride back. Like you're watching videos together and you're playing cards, and it's just, it's just a camaraderie that's just built, especially if you're like, you go and you beat one of the elite teams and an AFC team that's won playoff games and they got everything going for them, and you go into Jacksonville and beat them, you're like, we're back where we belong.
Right.
And in one game, you could restore what we saw the first 5 weeks of the season. I just think this is a perfectly timed matchup, considering the Niners hadn't won a game in a month. And, Jacksonville's done nothing but win in the last month. It's the ultimate test right now for them.
All right, Niner fans, 888-957-9570. Is this game going to dictate the rest of the season? We've got 9 games left, and I got a couple questions about these next 9 games. My biggest question, me personally, Shashka, I know you have some questions. I want you to get it off. But my question is, or what I'm looking forward to over these last 9 games is, what are we going to see from Brock Purdy? Is he our franchise quarterback? I think these 9 games, when you look at the schedule, and you look at who the 49ers are playing, and you look at the opposing quarterbacks, and you think about where we want to get to, which is Las Vegas in February, playing for the Super Bowl, I believe we're going to find out whether or not Kyle Shanahan believes Brock Purdy's the real deal. It's one thing to say it before the season. It's one thing to say it during training camp. It's one thing to say it during the preseason. It's one thing to say it at a podium after week 5. But I think these next 9 games are going to determine whether or not we know if Brock Purdy's the franchise quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm okay with that.
It's interesting. I know Brock's the quarterback. It gets all the headlines. To me, he's not the guy I'm looking at necessarily. And this is not to say that I don't believe in him. I believe in him. But this organization has pivoted off of quarterbacks that I've believed in very quickly.
Yeah.
So things can happen at quarterback, and I feel like they've kind of proven they can overcome it. One thing I know that they can overcome is when they don't have pass rush, they're not good. And they have invested tons of money. Be hypothetically. And again, I believe in Brock. But if they did, for whatever reason, go to the playoffs this year, and it's because of the quarterback or the relationship between the coach and the quarterback, they fell short. They could go into the draft. They could go into free agency. They could find a way to upgrade quarterback, and they're only on the hook for $900,000 for Brock Purdy. Hypothetically. Again, right. I believe in him. I think he's going to do really good things. I think he's done really good things, great things at times. Nick Bosa, they're married to. I think these next 9 games for Nick Bosa are extremely important. The worst thing that you can be in the NFL is a dead anchor contract. And when you have invested $125 million into somebody, you expect $125 million in production. And you are locked in. You gave $51 million guaranteed this year. He's got a lot of guarantees moving forward.
Right.
And if Bosa's not good, then the money I gave Hargraves is not good. And the money I've given Armstead and the trade I made for Chase isn't good. And that secondary won't be good. So to me, you can overcome some inconsistencies at quarterback. We can win games with our defense. Yeah. If Bosa's not good, they're in trouble. So I'm going with Bosa.
Isn't that a little frustrating that, again, we have to rely on the defense to carry this football team?
Oh, it's extremely frustrating.
I've been waiting for this offense. And for the first 5 weeks, this offense was holding its own, scoring 30, 30, 35, 42. Now we've got 3 straight 17s. It's going to be hard to score 30 against these defenses that's coming up here down the stretch for the 49ers. But if they're healthy and they're clicking, they should be able to have the opportunities to do so. The Bosa thing is interesting because now he's got his buddy Chase Young. And the fact is they gave him $120 million guaranteed, and they've had to trade for 2 more defensive ends.
It's not good.
Now, again, I think was it Baldy yesterday? Somebody made the point that if you take Bosa off of last year's team, they had an average pass rush, which I agree with. Their pass rush was average if you take away Nick Bosa. But that's the beauty of Nick Bosa. He does demand double teams, and he makes your pass rush. He takes it from an average pass rush to a great pass rush.
That's like saying take Aaron Donald off the Rams.
Exactly, right? You're going to have an average. Of course you're going to be
exactly.
average. But now with Bosa, and he does have his boy Chase Young, and he has Hargrave. and he has Armstead, and he has Randy Gregory, there's no excuses for Nick Bosa. There really isn't. But I look at the quarterback spot, and I'm saying, if Brock Purdy does not perform at the level that he did at the first 10 games of his career in the regular season, and we see the Brock Purdy from the last 3 weeks where there was a lot of good. I don't want to take away the 3 quarters from him, but I can't unsee the fourth quarter. I don't want to take away the first half against Cincinnati, but I can't unsee the second half and the 3 turnovers. If Brock Purdy somehow stumbles down the stretch here over the next 9 games, and I'm going to I'll throw out this question right here. Who's these next 9 games? Know the show right now. Know the show. We're playing Know the Show. Something's going to happen on the show in the next 15 minutes. At 7:50, be the first call in and answer the question about what happened on the show within these next 15 minutes, and you'll be on your way to Chase Center to play in the first ever 95-70 game knockout tournament. That's right, first ever 95-70 game knockout tournament. But I'm looking at the next 9 because we got some things happening here. We got Bosa. We got Brock Purdy. How about Brandon Ayuk? We gotta make a decision on him and getting his money, right? So I think these next 9 games for Brandon Ayuk are huge.
Yeah.
Chase Young, he wants a payday.
Well, I'd like to re-sign him before he starts to pop.
Well, I want to see what's happening with Chase Young.
No, I agree.
How's he playing?
I understand that.
So who's these next 9 games bigger for as we look individually into this roster? Is it Trent Williams? Is it Deebo Samuel? Is it Brandon Ayuk? Is it Brock Purdy? Is it Nick Bosa?
Well, here's why I'm going to take Bosa, because I think we would all agree that if the defensive line doesn't get home, the secondary is depreciably worse, right? Whatever team it is. But more in particular with the Niners. Their corners aren't great, but they're a lot better when Bosa's getting home. These linebackers, when they're able to roam and they don't have to blitz, aren't they better? How about these safeties, right? So to me, it starts up front in the trenches. I can make the argument outside of this Seattle game, okay, in the playoffs, 5 of the 6 playoff wins with Shanahan were defensive driven.
Yep, no doubt.
Okay, and it wasn't quarterback reliant.
Nope.
Not that the quarterback, whether it was Jimmy or whether it was Brock, didn't make plays. I think the second half from Brock was outstanding against Seattle, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt there. But I could make the argument the other 5 playoff wins were all run game, defense oriented.
No, there's no doubt.
All right?
Minnesota.
So to me, you can win high-level playoff games with not mediocre, but standard quarterback play. I don't think you can win playoff games with subpar defensive line play.
You cannot. You cannot. However, to win the ultimate prize,
that's a different story.
You can't have mediocre quarterback play.
That's a different story.
You cannot, because you got great defensive line play in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes for 3.5 quarters.
Good point.
And once the defense broke down, you got mediocre quarterback play. You weren't able to get it home. The defense, I thought, against the LA Rams played very well. Remember, they only scored 20 points. They were stuck on 7 going into the fourth quarter. So you got very good defensive play, but at some point the quarterback has to turn it up a notch. And they did not, whether it was Jimmy and whether it was Brock. And now, Brock, to his credit, had a very good fourth quarter against the Dallas Cowboys after being up and down in the first 3 quarters. Obviously, in the Philadelphia game, NFC Championship game, he got knocked out. So 888-957-9570. We'll dummy it down. Who's these next 9 games bigger for? Is it Nick Bosa or is it Brock Purdy? Is it Brock Purdy or is it Nick Bosa? 888-957-9570. And I will take Brock Purdy because the fact that we're already hearing rumblings about Sam Darnold in terms of some media and some fan base, it's already percolating a little bit.
That's so
and that's why this game coming out of the bye week, especially if Deebo's back and Trent Williams back, and we'll get an injury report later on today when the Niners reconvene at practice, getting ready for Jacksonville. These next 9, in my opinion, are huge for Brock Purdy because Kirk Cousins is going to come back from an Achilles tendon, and Minnesota may move off of him. And you don't think Shanahan's thinking about that Monday Night Football game? And you don't think Shanahan is saying to himself, boy, if Brock is not the guy that I thought he was, he will pivot in a heartbeat. You just mentioned it. Niners will pivot off a quarterback in a heartbeat. So for me, I want to see Purdy ride it out with 9 games, but I think it's bigger for him in the next 9 to play at a high level so we don't have to go through this quarterback carousel once again next offseason.
Yeah,
because I know Bosa's going to be here. Not to cut you off, Jess. No. I know Bosa's going to be here. Whether he's a dud this year or not, he's going to be here.
But when you invest that much into an individual, you expect them to be an elite difference maker. Premium money Like, it's one thing I get frustrated. It's one thing to give $17 million to Eric Armstead. It's another to give $125 million to a guy.
No
when you
doubt.
give that much money, this is why the Deshaun Watson deal in Cleveland is being scoffed at by everyone in the league because they gave him $200 million guaranteed, and he's not playing anywhere near it. And it's not just this year, because I think he's only on the hook for a small amount this year. It's the guaranteeds going forward for Deshaun. Same thing with Russell Wilson. I look at Nick Bosa. Yeah, you gave him $51 million in guarantee this year. You still owe him another $70-something million in guaranteed cash over the life of this contract. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so when you're paying someone premium money and then you look at the rest of what the defense is making, 6 of the top 9 guys on this team in terms of salaries are on defense.
Yep.
6 of 9. For them to reach their potential, we agree, they need pass rush.
They do need pass
Greenlaw
rush.
and Warner, Kinlaw, Armstead and Hargrave and all these guys. You have invested so much draft capital, so much money into the defense. They have to play better. And it feels like the league this year, just looking at it, feels like defenses are actually better than we gave credit to coming into the year.
It's a defensive league because now you know about all these teams that are building. They know it's an offensive league. Quarterbacks want to throw the ball around the yard. Let's get big in the trenches. Because, again, the Super Bowls, and we talk about this, and I think it took a while for people to catch on to this. You got to have a very good front four. You got to win at the line of scrimmage. That's always been the rule in football for many years. And for some reason, people thought, oh, you could just throw the ball around and throw for 400 yards. And no, the game's won in the trenches. And if the trenches, you're not good up front, you're not going to win in the playoffs. So that's why we look at Baltimore. That's why we look at Cleveland. That's why we look at Cincinnati. Kansas City this year are really good in the trenches.
No, this might be their best defense.
Best defense under
during
Andy
the
Reid.
Mahomes era.
No doubt. And then you got Philadelphia. We know about their front. And one thing about Shanahan's front, and Baldy talked about the Jaguars defense getting better. We could play that cut in a second. Two teams have done this, and I wonder if opposing teams will catch on to this. The 5-man front. You know where I was going with that? Philadelphia run a 5-man front with Reddick and Brandon Graham on the edge, and you got the big boys in the middle, whether it's Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, whoever it is. Cincinnati. They came to Levi Stadium. They ran a lot of 5-man fronts. It really slowed that running game down. So I wonder how many opposing teams will start to run 5-man fronts against the 49ers. At times, the Rams had 5-man fronts in that NFC title game. It really slowed down that running game. They were playing 8-9 in the box. Eric Weddle was playing in the box as a linebacker. Maybe that's a remedy to slowing down Shanahan's offense. I don't know.
Do you think that's a byproduct of teams trying to adjust to Purdy and the offense as a whole, or is that because Trent was out?
Well, I think no.
Or both.
But I think they know the running game is the key for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Everything stems off that run.
Well, now you don't have Banks, and we know that they like to run to that left side in particular. That is the dominant side that they're going to run to, the Trent Banks side. And without Banks, I'm very worried.
Yeah, no, Banks.
Feliciano is a downgrade.
It is a downgrade. And Brindle hasn't been playing well. And Burford hasn't had his best season. I think he's had a sophomore slump.
Burford's been, I would say, more bad
sophomore
than
slump.
good. Yeah.
Colton McKivitz. We know who he is. Don't let Josh Allen get over there off the edge.
If there's one criticism to team roster construction, I think it's very easy to point at 2 spots on the team that feel very weak, and that is the secondary in terms of the cornerback spot and the offensive line. They have the highest paid offensive lineman, and then everything else feels very inexpensive and not thought out. Although Banks was a second rounder.
Let me ask you this, because I see a text here on the Comcast business text line. Now, I'm with you here on that one, but going back to Purdy. 650, so tired of hearing people questioning Purdy. He's first in all of football in EPA and second in QBR. He's not going anywhere. Anyone who says the name Sam Darnold is telling on themselves that they don't know football. Now, when it comes to EPA and QBR, you kind of lose me there. To me, EPA and QBR, it's just I'm just saying, watch the game. And when I'm watching the game the last 2 weeks, I see a quarterback who's turned the ball over 5 times in the last 5 quarters. Now, if you want to blame the 2 interceptions on a concussion, fine. If you want to blame the turnovers on a concussion the next week against Cincinnati, fine. But the facts are, when you get on the field, as Tony Romo said, and Tony Romo had to cut, once you get on that football field, all excuses are out the door. You're healthy, right? We use the same analogy for Stephen Curry in 2016. Nobody gives us a pat. Nobody allows us to give Steph Curry a pass for the knee injury. Once you step on the court, everything's fair game. So with that, I'm looking at Brock Purdy over these next 9 saying, you don't believe Shanahan if Brock Purdy's just playing mediocre or if he's playing average and he's just doing just enough to help you win games. You don't think Shanahan's looking for the next best thing? Jimmy Garoppolo led this team to a Super Bowl. It was defensive led, I get it, but Jimmy played well in 2019. I want to give him his credit. 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Boy, we'll die for a season like that from a quarterback. And almost 4,000 yards. And he would have threw for over 4,000 had he not been benched in like 4 fourth quarters due to the Niners blowing out teams. But even Shanahan was looking for an upgrade from him. All right? The guy just helped you get to the Super Bowl. And Shanahan was like, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins. Like, you know what I'm saying? So who's to say if Brock Purdy doesn't play at that level, the same level as Jimmy G did in 2019, you don't think Shanahan's going to be searching? I don't care about EPA. I don't care about QBR. I care about you taking care of the football. So Steiny said something yesterday, Shasky, and I want to know your opinion about this.
Before you continue on the EPA, I'm just looking at 2021, which wasn't the greatest Jimmy Garoppolo season. Stafford, Garoppolo, and Aaron Rodgers were outproducing everyone in that particular
EPA.
stat.
See, that stat is bogus.
Drop back efficiency on early and late downs. Again, Cincinnati Bengals, the Rams, and the 49ers, as well as Green Bay, tops in the league. Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not trying to be like mean and rip the number, but like it doesn't hold a lot of water to me.
Boom.
It reminds me a lot of war. It's a way to put a number to attach someone with I don't need EPA to tell me Patrick Mahomes is throwing to nobodies and he's still a superstar.
Yeah.
I don't need the EPA and the wars and all these things to quantify to me to put into numerical value that Joe Burrow dominated the 49ers and the Buffalo Bills in back-to-back weeks.
I'm with you. The QBR stuff and the EPA, that's silly.
Here's the thing I would say
that's why the whole thing, real quick, Shasky, the whole thing about
Purdy's been great.
Yeah, he's been solid for the Niners. He's been I can't call you great when you turn the ball over.
Okay, but I thought the first 5 weeks was great football.
Really good. Great football.
And I thought Cleveland was by far his worst game. I thought in the Minnesota game, depending on how you balance things out, I thought he was really good for 3 quarters and then not good in the 4th.
No doubt.
In the Cincinnati game, I thought he was excellent for like 2.5 quarters. Late third, the red zone pick was bad. Then the 4th quarter wasn't good.
So what's the stat a couple weeks ago? Oh, DVOA. The Niners had the 8th best passing offense all time, according to DVOA, through the first 8 weeks of the season. And I just think that's laughable. That's nothing about this offense. We watch the passing offense. First of all, I think they're like 27th in pass attempts anyway. But there's nothing. And you've been on this about the drop-back passing game. It's a very astute point about the drop-back passing game. The drop-back passing game in the 49ers at times looks outdated.
100%. The route combinations, the ability to spread people out wide.
It just kind of looks outdated at times.
100%. It's all like if you watch the way that they complete passes, the majority of them are at near the line of scrimmage or coming out of the play action. Now it's effective, and Purdy's been excellent at it. He's really good. I think Purdy can do more in the 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. I don't think Kyle lets him.
No, I don't either. And he did a lot of that at Iowa State. Yeah, the DVOA, the EPA, the QBR stuff, that kind of just falls off my shoulder. I don't put much stock into that stuff. I'm sorry. But Steiny said something yesterday about Brock, and I want to get your opinion on this because I saw this on Twitter. I was like, whoa. So Steiny said, to me, Brock Purdy is now on the same level in terms of how we judge him as Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa, and Dak Prescott. Those guys' reputations are established, and to me, so is Purdy's. It's just, who is going to get it done in the postseason?
I'm not. No. And here's why I'll disagree with that sentence. Tua, I put to the side. He has yet to get paid. Every other one of those guys has gotten hundreds of millions of dollars in guarantees. Every one of those guys has multiple seasons under their belt as a starting quarterback.
Playing at a high level?
Yes, absolutely.
Even Dak Prescott.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, here's what I always say about Dak. Dak is Alex Smith, but a little better, right? And like you can win a lot of games with Alex Smith in the regular season. I don't know how many playoff games you can win. I feel like there's a ceiling. I'd love Dak at $20 million. Don't love him at $40 million, right? Yeah. Like there's nuance to it. But all those other guys that you referenced, Each has got, I believe, over 150 plus million in guarantees. Brock Purdy's making $900,000. And Brock Purdy's in his second full season in the NFL. No, I do not put him in those same categories.
Yeah, I think.
Just not yet.
I think these next 9 games.
Tua hasn't even played a playoff game.
Listen, 650. I got a lot of love for Brock Purdy. But also, I've watched quarterbacks here in San Francisco. And I know the quarterback business in San Francisco. We know controversy like no other fan base, right? We know quarterback controversy as well as the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. That's what we do here. And I got a lot of love for Brock. But I believe he's going to need these next 9 games to establish himself as a guy Shanahan can win with in the future.